History isn't just dates and battles. It's the sound of boots in the mud, the crack of distant artillery, and the choices men made when the world was on fire. This is the Silent War Diaries. Welcome to the front line. Welcome to the Silent War Diaries, where World War II speaks again. Here, every story is more than a chapter from the past. It's a return to the trenches, the cockpits, the storm-tossed seas, and the frozen forests where ordinary men were thrust into extraordinary moments. Through cinematic storytelling, immersive narration, and carefully researched accounts, we uncover the hidden battles, the quiet acts of courage, and the human experiences often lost beneath the noise of war. If you want history that feels alive, if you want the war told through the eyes of those who lived it, if you want forgotten stories brought back into the light, you're home. Grab your gear. Steady your nerves. This is the Silent War Diaries. The story begins now. The department store of the Reich. December 18, 1944. The Ardennes was a white hell. Snow fell so thick that the fir trees looked like ghosts lined up to watch the war die. Oberleutnant Karl Richter's company, 37 men left from a battalion that had marched out of Aachen with nearly 800, stumbled forward through knee-deep drifts, chasing the faint thunder of artillery that always seemed to be one ridge ahead. They had not eaten properly in 4 days. Their boots were wrapped in rags because the leather had cracked and the nails had frozen into the soles. Every man carried the same thought. If we do not take something today, food, fuel, ammunition, we will simply lie down in the snow and let it bury us. Richter's radio operator, Gefreiter Hans Becker, a 19-year-old from Munich who still had acne on his neck, whispered the impossible just after dawn. Herr Oberleutnant. American voices. Close. Maybe 200 meters. Richter raised his fist. The column halted. Men dropped behind tree trunks like puppets with cut strings. He listened. Yes, English, lazy and loud, drifting over the wind. A generator coughed somewhere ahead, the steady putt-putt of something that had fuel to burn. Richter motioned 2 scouts forward. 10 minutes later they returned, eyes wide, mouths working without sound. It's a supply dump, one whispered. Not a fighting position. Trucks. Tents. Lights. They have electric lights. Richter did not believe them until he saw it himself. They crawled to the edge of a shallow valley. Below, half hidden under white camouflage netting, lay an American depot the size of a small town. Floodlights on tall poles burned bright even in daylight, powered by humming generators. Rows of olive-drab trucks stood nose to tail, windshields already cleared of snow by men who had gloves. Steam rose from field kitchens. Soldiers, clean-shaven, pink-cheeked, laughing, carried crates as though they weighed nothing. Richter felt something twist inside his chest. He had expected barbed wire, machine gun nests, perhaps a half-starved company of GIs ready to fight for every bullet. Instead he saw abundance. He turned to his men. No shooting until my order. We take it whole. They moved like wolves. The first Americans died without understanding what was happening. A sentry turned at the wrong moment and took a bullet through the throat. 2 cooks stepped out of a tent with coffee cups in their hands and were bayoneted before the cups hit the ground. The fight, if it could be called that, lasted 6 minutes. 12 Americans dead, 3 wounded and bound, the rest fleeing into the forest in whatever clothes they had grabbed. Richter's men suffered 1 casualty, a private shot in the thigh by a panicked sergeant who was immediately clubbed unconscious with a rifle butt. Then silence, broken only by the generators and the wind. Richter stepped over a body and pushed aside the flap of the nearest tent. He stopped breathing. The tent was 30 meters long. Electric bulbs hung from the ridgepole. Along both walls ran wooden shelves, real shelves, planed and painted, like Karstadt in Berlin before the war. Only these shelves were not empty. Cans of Spam stood in pyramids. Cartons of Camel and Lucky Strike cigarettes rose in towers higher than a man. Chocolate, Hershey's bars still in gold foil, were stacked like bricks. Tinned peaches, tinned ham, tinned butter, tinned milk. Boxes marked medical supplies, overflowed with morphine syrettes, sulfa powder, bandages still in wax paper. On a table in the middle sat an open crate of wool socks, thick, new, American size 11. Richter picked one up. The wool was soft, almost greasy with lanolin. He had forgotten wool could feel like that. Behind him, Becker made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Sirs, look." He pointed to the far end. A separate section had been roped off with red cord, the way expensive perfumes were displayed in peacetime shops. Only here the luxury was more practical and, to a freezing soldier, infinitely more valuable: down sleeping bags, reversible white and olive parkas with fur-lined hoods, electrically heated gloves, packets of chemical hand warmers still in cellophane. Richter walked the aisle slowly, touching nothing yet, afraid it would vanish. His men poured in behind him, silent at first, then whispering, then shouting. Someone found coffee, real coffee, not the roasted acorns they had been drinking for 2 years, and held the tin to his face and wept openly. Unteroffizier Willie Newman, a Berliner with a boxer's broken nose, discovered the cigarette warehouse. He stood in the doorway, helmet in his hands, staring at pallets wrapped in plastic, each holding 10,000 cartons. "Mein Gott," he said. "There's enough here to smoke until 1950. Richter found the ration tent. A handwritten sign read, "Holiday packages. Do not open until December 24th. Someone had ignored the sign. Boxes lay slit open, spilling wonders. Fruitcake in tins, cans of turkey, miniature bottles of bourbon, cans of peanuts roasted in butter, even tiny Christmas trees made of green-painted pipe cleaners. He picked up a fruitcake. The label showed a smiling American family around a fireplace. The cake weighed more than the bread ration for his entire platoon for a week. Outside, his driver, Fritz Keller, had forced open the fuel depot. Jerry cans, thousands of them, stood in perfect rows, each stenciled, gasoline, 80 octane. Keller dipped a finger, tasted, then laughed like a madman. "It's full. All of them. Not watered, not methanol, real petrol." Richter stepped back into the snow. The cold hit him like a slap, but for the first time in months he barely felt it. Around him his men were transforming. They tore off their threadbare greatcoats and pulled on American parkas. They stuffed pockets with chocolate and cigarettes. One man sat in the snow eating Spam from the can with a bayonet, grease running down his chin, crying and laughing at the same time. Becker came running up, cheeks flushed, carrying something wrapped in a blanket. "Herr Oberleutnant, you have to see this." He led Richter to a small tent marked PX Supplies, officers only. Inside, on folding tables, lay treasures that belonged to another planet. Cartons of Coca-Cola in glass bottles packed in wooden crates with straw, jars of peanut butter, boxes of razor blades, bars of soap that smelled of lemons, even, Richter blinked twice, a crate of Lifesavers candies in every flavor. On the last table sat 2 items that stopped Richter's heart. The first was a stack of American magazines, Life, Collier's, the Saturday Evening Post, covers showing pretty girls in summer dresses, advertisements for refrigerators and Buick automobiles, headlines about baseball scores. The second was a portable phonograph with a pile of records. Someone had already set the needle down. Glenn Miller's In the Mood filled the tent, brassy and impossibly cheerful. Richter stood listening, eyes closed. For 30 seconds the war did not exist. Then he opened his eyes and the spell broke. He was still a German officer in a captured depot, and somewhere out there papers columns were burning fuel they did not have, and the Amos would be coming back with tanks. He stepped outside and fired 3 shots from his pistol into the air. Every man froze. "Listen to me," he shouted. "We take what we need, what we can carry and drive. Food, fuel, winter clothing, ammunition. Load the American trucks. We have perhaps 2 hours before their armor arrives. Move." They moved like men possessed. They abandoned their own worn-out Opel Blitzes and took the American 2.5-ton GMC trucks, 6x6, fat tires, heaters that actually worked. They filled them to the canvas roofs, canned rations, jerry cans of fuel, crates of .30-06 ammunition they could convert to their own weapons, mortar rounds, grenades, medical supplies. Someone found a crate marked Type O blood plasma and carried it as carefully as a newborn. Richter oversaw the loading himself. He allowed each man one personal luxury. Becker took a down sleeping bag and a carton of Lucky Strikes. Newman filled his pockets with Hershey bars until they bulged like tumors. Keller found a case of bourbon and rolled it up the truck's tailgate while singing drunkenly. Richter's own choice was small. A single tin of Maxwell House coffee and the November issue of Life magazine with a cover photograph of American sailors drinking Coca-Cola on a Pacific island. He tucked both inside his new parka. As the last truck loaded, Richter walked back through the depot one final time. He passed the body of an American sergeant still clutching a half-eaten sandwich. Real bread, real ham, real butter. The waste of it twisted something inside him. He found the 3 American prisoners sitting in the snow, hands tied, guarded by a corporal who kept staring at their boots with open greed. Richter crouched in front of the American lieutenant, a boy really, barely 25, cheeks raw from the cold. "You speak German?" Richter asked in English. The lieutenant nodded cautiously. Richter gestured at the warehouses. "All this, how is it possible?" The American gave a tired shrug. "We make a lot of everything. Always have." Richter studied the lieutenant's clean uniform, the wool scarf, the leather gloves. He thought of his own men 2 hours ago, gray-faced, lips cracked, fingers black with frostbite. He stood. "You will walk west. Do not follow us. If your tanks come soon, you live. If not," he shrugged. He left the Americans their overcoats and 1 canteen of water. It was more mercy than he could afford, but the sight of all that plenty had unsteadied him. The convoy, 12 captured American trucks now flying makeshift swastika flags made from Red Cross sheets, rolled out just as the first Sherman tanks appeared on the far ridge, too late and too far to stop them. For 2 days Richter's company lived like kings. They drove with heaters blasting, eating chocolate and canned ham, smoking real tobacco. They slept in down bags under pine boughs while the Ardennes blizzard howled outside. For 48 hours the war seemed almost survivable. Then the American J-bows found them, and the shells began to fall again, and the chocolate was gone, and the fuel ran low, and the old hunger returned. But something had changed forever. In the long retreat that followed, through Bastogne, across the Rhine, into the final collapse, Richter carried that copy of Life magazine. When he was captured by the Americans near Remagen in March 1945, the first thing the GI who searched him did was laugh. "Hey, sir," the GI called to his lieutenant, holding up the tattered magazine. "This Kraut's got better taste in reading than we do." Richter, thin again, wearing the same captured parka now stiff with blood and dirt, only smiled. Years later, in a DP camp, he would tell the story to anyone who asked, how for one morning in December the war had paused, and 37 half-dead Lancers had walked through an American department store in the middle of the forest and understood, all at once, that the Reich had been fighting a country that could lose a warehouse full of plenty and simply build another one before lunch. He never told the part about the fruitcake, or the sound of Glenn Miller in the snow, or how for a single day he had almost believed the war could still be won. Some truths were too bitter even for survivors to speak aloud. These were real men, real fears, and real sacrifices, and today, their stories live on through you. Thank you for watching this episode of the Silent War Diaries. If their courage inspired you, consider subscribing so more forgotten voices can be heard. Until the next story, remember, history isn't distant. It's personal,